This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. On this segment, we take a look at some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning, but we also take a look at some of the political pieces we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 26th of November 2021, and I am CS.
And I am Serbia.
And I am AX. In case you missed the headlines, here they are. In the Daily Nation, RAILA, Oka making of a grand coalition. In the Standard, warming up to each other. In the Star, RAILA hints at new pact with Kalonzo. And finally, in the People Daily, RAILA, Kalonzo in alliance talks.
Now, we have a three-part criteria with which we used to judge the headlines. Why don't you take us through that, Aya?
We have a three-part criteria that we use to evaluate our headlines. We ask ourselves, are the headlines topical or speculative, repetitive or groundbreaking, thoughtful or just plain lazy? CS, Serbia, what do you guys think of our headlines today?
I think they are topical, they are relevant because they are basically speaking of the same thing, the four of them. However, time will remain the bearer of truth between the RAILA and Kalonzo talks, because we might see Kalonzo pull 2007, you know, he'll run alone and he will form a post-coalition agreement rather than a pre-coalition agreement. So, yeah.
I pleaded temporary insanity earlier this week when I suggested that RAILA, with his 44% strong, with his gaining ground in Gema, he's already at 15%, even without choosing a Gema running mate. If he chooses Kalonzo as his running mate, that means he has a Kamba vote plus the 15% of Gema. It's enough to maybe just get him over the brow of the hill. If not, he's still ahead in a round 2 scenario. So for once, I love all these headlines.
Okay, and there you have it, a first for the Fifth Estate. We have 4 winning headlines. What happens when you let somebody else take the fall for your misdeeds? When you are asleep to the harm that you have caused, but justice must still be served. Well, for William Ruto, this means that your lawyer, one Mr. Paul Gicheru, goes to The Hague in what could be called a fantastic demonstration of client loyalty. However, Gicheru's ICC trial can only shield Ruto for so long. Therefore, today we would like to remind Ruto that it is not a question of if, but when. Let me tell you a story from the good book. Once upon a time, there was a prophet named Jonah. One day, God commanded him to go prophesy to Nineveh and warn this town of its impending destruction due to the people's disobedience. But instead of visiting the town, Jonah runs away. He finds a ship sailing to a different town on the opposite side of the world. And after paying the fare, Jonah boards the ship. And they set sail on rather calm water. Jonah took the stillness of the water as a sign that he is successful. After all, if God had disapproved of his actions, he figured something would have happened by now. And so Jonah went below deck on the ship to take a nap. But soon God sent a terrible wind to assault the ship, and everyone on the ship was terrified. Everyone but Jonah, for he was asleep. Everyone began throwing cargo into the sea to lighten the ship so that it could more easily pass through the terrible wind. But this only made things worse. In fact, no matter what the sailors tried, their ship could not weather the storm. Eventually, the captain realized that one of his passengers is asleep and wakes him up. The captain asks Jonah how he can sleep through the terrible wind and why he is doing nothing to help. Then the captain and the others realized this is no ordinary storm. God was sending a message to someone on that ship. So Jonah, the captain, and the sailors decide to cast lots to determine who is responsible for the storm. And the lot fell on the prophet Jonah. He was responsible for the terrible wind. He was responsible for the storm that befell the ship, all because he ran away. Realizing that Jonah was responsible for the storm, the sailors eventually threw him overboard. And soon after, the storm quieted. Ladies and gentlemen, unless you are a stranger in Jerusalem, you know that a storm is brewing. This week, we learned that the prosecutor of Gicheru's case officially named Ruto as coordinator of the plan that corrupted his case. This means that Ruto risks being charged with corruptly influencing a witness, and if he is convicted, he could serve 5 years for every count leveled against him. And this is the storm that awaits Ruto. Now, is it possible that this storm was sent by the Almighty? Because, like Jonah, Ruto assumed that all is well because he is not personally suffering the consequences of his alleged actions. Or is the terrible wind from The Hague designed to motivate Ruto to wake up, to address the consequences of his alleged actions? All these questions are rooted in a single query. How will Ruto respond to the storm that may befall him?
The prosecution at ICC has forwarded evidence that implicates William Ruto directly in witness tampering. Remember, the court had declared a mistrial in the Ruto Sang case. The ICC did not acquit him from the crimes he was accused of. It only froze it in time, meaning the court could pick it up again in the future. And this possibility leaves Ruto as vulnerable as a goat on Christmas. And just yesterday, the ICC told us that Ruto sought to sabotage his case by tampering with witnesses. Now, if Ruto thought he had succeeded in killing his case in 2016, we want to tell him, yes, he succeeded, but only for a moment. Ruto knows the only way to stop his ICC fate is incumbency. The only way to stop Khan from hauling him to The Hague is him being president. But we want to remind him that you cannot postpone your date with destiny, and we wish to narrate him a story. Once upon a time, Death visited an old man. He told the old man that today will be his last day on earth, but the old man was not ready to die. At that moment, he was confronted by his own mortality, and so he cried out, "But I'm not ready." And he began to plead with Death to spare him. But Death was not moved by the pleas of the old man. Death told him that he couldn't grant him his wish. Death reminded him that today your name is the first on the list. Soon enough, the man realized that he could not change Death's mind. And so the old man quickly changed tact and tried to outsmart Death. He looked at Death and said, "Okay then, why don't you take a seat and we will drink a coffee before we go?" Seeing nothing wrong with the request, Death agreed to a cup of coffee, which the old man prepared. As the old man was preparing the coffee, he mixed it with some sleeping pills and gave the drink to Death. Death took the coffee and started sipping it. After finishing the coffee, he immediately fell into a deep sleep. While he was asleep, the old man hurriedly took the list and removed his name from the top of the list and put it at the bottom of the list. He then sat down and patted himself on his back for his successful mission. Now, when Death woke up, he looked around for the old man to thank him for his hospitality before he could take leave. He found the old man in his balcony enjoying a can of beer. He then said to the old man, "I wish to leave, and because you have been so nice to me, I will now start my job from the bottom of the list." What is our point here? Death in this story is ICC, and Ruto's name is on the ICC list. And he thought he could delay and postpone his destiny. Jean de La Fontaine once told us that a man often meets his destiny on the road he took to avoid it. And the road Ruto took to avoid his day in court was engaging in witness tampering and interference, which is also a crime according to Article 70 of the Rome Statute. Ruto is accused of deploying an elaborate scheme executed by lawyer Paul Gishero and co. in order to sabotage his case at ICC. The tragic irony is this: his schemes to avoid justice are the very same schemes that will have him ultimately look justice in the eyes and have the iniquities of his soul laid bare in open court. It is in this way he will meet his destiny on the road he took to avoid it. Because, ask yourself, is it a coincidence that Paul Gishero, out of nowhere, chose to surrender himself to the ICC? Is it a coincidence that 90 days later, Ruto's lawyer Karim Khan was named ICC prosecutor? And is it an idle coincidence that our Director of Criminal Investigations, George Kinoti, was elected to the Interpol Executive Committee the same week Ruto is explicitly linked to the Gishero case? I would like to submit that William Ruto has known all along that ICC will come back to haunt him. whether he kithni or ndikni, this is a fate he cannot escape from. This is his destiny, and he will be answerable for all those innocent lives that were lost. Museveni won't help him. Mama Mboga won't help him. Sudi will go mteja. All of them will scamper away like rats abandoning a sinking ship. And so to William Samoei Ruto we say, dread it, run from it. Destiny still arrives all the same. And now it's here.
We would like to begin our final submission with a quote from one of George R.R. Martin's books, A Fist of Crows, in which he wrote that history is a wheel, for the nature of man is fundamentally unchanging. What has happened before will perforce happen again. Allow us to reinforce that quote with a similar insight from President Harry Truman, who asserted that the only thing new in the world is the history you do not know. Harry Truman and George R.R. Martin were probably inspired by the words of King Solomon in the book of Ecclesiastes, where it was written that what has been will be again, what has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. The point, ladies and gentlemen, the reason we begin with these insights is because we would like to draw from the well of history and anticipating the flow of things that are yet unraveling. As we reflect on William Ruto's impending date with the ICC and his other controversies and scandals, we would like to offer some perspective with insights from history. Previously on this panel, we have on more than one occasion highlighted the parallels between William Ruto's case and that of Jean-Pierre Bemba, where Deputy President Jean-Pierre escaped crimes against humanity charges through witness interference and tampering. But he was later found guilty for his interferences with the administration of justice. We observe that Bemba's case rhymes with William Ruto's. But today, the story we would like to borrow from is one of the most famous trials from history, the trial of Gaius Verus. Gaius Verus was a Roman governor of Sicily during the latter days of the Roman Republic. One of the reasons this trial was so famous, other than being prosecuted by Marcus Cicero himself, it was also famous because it highlighted the failures and issues that typified the things that led to the fall of the great Roman Republic. Gaius Verus was the epitome of those who commit grievous crimes while in high office. Some of the charges brought against him revolved around plunder, embezzlement, complex schemes of corruption, compromising national security because of his greed, and even extrajudicial killings. Gaius Verus, just like the main protagonist of our story, used his high office to visit oppression on the very people he was entrusted to serve and protect. He was an embodiment of some of the main things that were wrong with the Roman Republic. And the reason, therefore, it was so important to render a successful prosecution against him was because the future of the Republic and the dignity of its people were essentially also on trial. In other words, the trial was about so much more than Gaius Verus. What was also on trial was what he stood for and what he represented. It is as though the soul of the Republic was on trial. The historian Robert Harris gave an account of how Marcus Cicero brought out this point when he warned the Roman Senate about what was at stake depending on how they conducted the trial. Cicero told the Senate as follows: "A belief has become established, as harmful to the Republic as it is to yourselves, that these courts, with you senators as the jury, will never convict any man, however guilty, if he has sufficient money. But the character of the man I am prosecuting," continued Cicero, "is such that you may use him to restore your good name. Gaius Verus has robbed the treasury and behaved like a pirate and a destroying pestilence in his province of Sicily. You have only to find this man guilty, and respect in you will be rightly restored. But if you do not, if his immense wealth is sufficient to shatter your honesty, well then, I shall achieve one thing at least. The nation will not believe Verus to be right, and me wrong, but they will certainly know all they need to know about a jury of Roman senators. This was Cicero's powerful words on the floor of the Senate. The moral we draw from this story, from history, is this: the accusations leveled against William Ruto are about so much more than the man and his cult of personality. It is about also who we are and who we want to be as a nation, about what we stand for, about the leadership we desire and deserve, decisively and deliberately deciding who we are. We face an existential moment, not just at the ICC, not just in the numerous scandals this man faces in various judicial courts and courts of public opinion, but also in the upcoming election. If our republic and our collective nationhood were to speak in one voice, we imagine that voice would borrow from the words of Jesus and ask us, "Who do you say that I am?" In the same way that question is the essence of theology, we render it here as being the essence of political philosophy, because the answer to that question will determine the trajectory and destiny of our nation.
On that note, we would like to leave you with this quote from Cicero: "If we are not ashamed to think it, we should not be ashamed to say it."
Powerful, powerful words. Now, on a day in which we have had 4 winning headlines, a first for the Fifth Estate, do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and don't forget to click that little bell button on the side to be notified whenever we post a new video. We are also on your TV screens. You can find us on Pang, Free to Air, GoTV, and Star Times. Have a fantastic evening.
God bless.